especially if I have a team. And that's where it becomes a bit more complicated, because if I'm alone, it's going to be easier, let's say, not easy. But if it's a team, then that's where it gets complicated, because somebody says something that is he shouldn't have said, and then all the things get messed up.
You're absolutely right, Artin. So ground rules are critical, and we're going to cherry pick a few of those ground rules here that are really important. The first one here is that purchasing is the lead negotiator. People will follow you if you show leadership. It's not taking over in a way that other people perceive as aggressive, but it's taking over in a way that other people perceive as being a leader. So you define what the meeting is, who attends, what the agenda is, when you break to caucus, and the overall flow of the meeting. Don't be afraid to take that leadership position. People will follow you. You also need to know the negotiation plan, but just as importantly, every member of your team needs to know it. They need to be well versed, and you need to set that expectation. And by the way, if you don't have a documented negotiation plan, you need to start doing that. It's not enough to have that in your head. It has to be documented and in front of everybody, either in digital or hard copy, because if you don't have a roadmap, then any direction will take you there. The next thing is you have to tell your teammates if they're unsure of something they want to say, don't say it. I can tell you from a couple of decades of experience, every time an end user or an engineer or whomever else at the negotiation has something that they're not sure they want to say and they err on the side of saying it, it almost never is a positive thing, and it can almost always be detrimental. If they're not sure about it, chances are it could be damaging to your negotiating position, and it's better they don't say it and ask you privately. It's encouraged, and you should talk to your legal people, but it's encouraged not to use the words partnership or leverage. Partnership, because that's actually a financial term that entails profit sharing, and there has been lawsuits over this very concept because people kept calling their suppliers partners, and then the suppliers sued and said, if we're partners, how come you're not sharing profit with us? And then if you're one of those big companies, one of the big gorillas on the block that's spending more than everybody else, and you keep using the word leverage, well, that doesn't look good in a court of law, because it looks like you're throwing your weight around and using bully tactics. So I don't encourage use of either of those words. The next one is also kind of a legal aspect as well. You should always focus on the what and not the how. The reason is if you focus on the what, then you're letting them figure out how they're going to do it. But if you tell the supplier actually how to do it, then that can result in detrimental reliance, which is a legal risk, which means that another party reasonably relied to their detriment on your actions or even your behavior. And so Believe me, this is not something you want on your resume. If you want to have a supplier, for instance, I once caught an engineer telling a supplier, I need you to build a spare parts hub within 2 hours of our facility. I grabbed the engineer and took him outside and I said, go change what you just said and say, I need you to be able to deliver parts within 2 hours. The difference is the first one was the how, the second one was the what. Let the supplier worry about the how.
All right. I mean, to introduce this step, pre-negotiation meeting. Actually, what we're trying to illustrate here is how they can, well, I can use the word leverage, right? How they can leverage their relationship, or how can leverage the meeting with the supplier to understand more about that. But could you elaborate more in exactly what do you mean by pre-negotiation meeting and what goes into it?
It is my strong opinion, based on a lot of experience, that negotiations are won and lost before they ever start. I'm going to say that one more time because it's one of the most important things in this webinar. Negotiations are won and lost before they ever start. And too many procurement professionals just jump into negotiations without adequate information and counter intelligence and analysis. And they think that they don't have time for a pre-negotiation meeting. The splash of cold water, I want to tell you, is what you don't have time for is unproductive negotiations that take even longer because this pre-analysis wasn't done. And so our tendency as procurement professionals is to go into negotiations and tell suppliers, here's the things we want. This is a completely wrong approach, and in fact I think it's being taught by almost every course out there, and I know from experience this is not the way to go. What you want to do, and you always have to picture, there's a supplier has a defense shield that's either going up or going down. When you go into a meeting with them and start telling them what to do, the defense shield goes up. Before you can negotiate with somebody, they have to know, like, and trust you. You have to start with asking them what they want from the deal to be successful. Now here's the deal. You're not asking them this because you're saying you're going to do those things. You're asking them this because we're doing counterintelligence gathering. Remember I said that the goal is to bake as many pies as possible? That's what you're doing here. When you ask them what they need from the deal to be successful, you're trying to pull information out of them. And this needs to be a 20, 30-minute discussion where you find out every single interest that they have, and then I'll teach you methodologies to be able to classify those interests and to be able to say which ones are high value to the supplier but have low TCO impact to you. You're going to leverage those things to achieve breakthrough results like you've never experienced before. And perception counts when you do this. This cannot be a lip service exercise. It has to be genuine. And you have to practice not expressing disagreement. No matter how disagreeable what they say might be. The reason is you're not negotiating yet. This is a pre-negotiating meeting. And if you start to express disagreement, their defense shield goes up. All you have to do right now is just to show you care about the other party. That is going to buy you goodwill, and it's going to make the supplier more willing to make positive concessions for you as a motivational factor for them to help you be successful. And pre-negotiation meeting is a pay now or pay later process. If you say that you don't have time for this, I'm here to tell you, you will pay later, and you'll pay later through the note, because negotiations will take longer and they'll have less positive results. Some of the other objectives you want to achieve is you want to know the players on the other side, and you want to know who the decision makers are. You do not want to assume that you know who the decision makers are, because it's not true that the most senior person is always the decision maker. I've seen a lot of times where it wasn't the most senior person who is the decision maker. Sometimes the quietest person at the table is the one who's holding all the cards and who's calling all the shots. You need to align on requirements. Suppliers need to know exactly what is going to get negotiated and what's off the table and is not going to get negotiated. And you need to set expectations on their proposal, who they bring, when you're going to negotiate, and how long it's going to take. You'll align on timelines, on when it starts, when it finishes, and there's a series of things that I'm going to teach you to give the supplier homework, to put them to work for you. Remember, you have to be the maestro and they have to be the